This is Democracy Watch. Marc, a major story that has kind of enveloped politics right now is the fact that Donald Trump is going after the lifeblood of the Democratic Party, the ability for Democrats to raise money using ActBlue. We've seen a lot of coverage about this. So first off, where does this stand in terms of Trump's attacks on ActBlue?
Right. So Donald Trump issued another one of his missives from the Oval Office. And this one, as you point out, targeted ActBlue, which is the platform that Democratic campaigns and many progressive organizations use to raise money. As you say, it is the lifeblood of how money is raised, particularly small dollar donations, grassroots money for Democratic candidates, parties, and progressive organizations. And he did this on purpose. Like, he didn't just accidentally pick one online platform. Right. He picked the dominant online platform because he is hoping to criminalize, because he's asked for the Department of Justice, Pam Bondi, to conduct a review. He is trying to intimidate. He is trying to do everything he can to shut down a piece of Democratic and progressive infrastructure, which, Brian, is something you and I, through this series, have been warning people about for months. We talked before he took office. We were talking about how he was going to weaponize the use of the federal government to target his political opponents. Well, if you wanted to target his political opponents, one way you do it is you go after individuals, right? We've seen him do that. Another is you go after large institutions, universities, law firms, and the like. But, when you get to the heart of it, you start to target the specific institutions, the specific pieces of the machinery that allow opposition movements to flourish and to hold you accountable. And that's the playbook he's running. He's running right now. And I wish I could say, Brian, that the legacy media has been as aggressive in spotting this for what it is as you have been in all of your coverage, both in this series and otherwise. But alas, here we are.
As we wait to see what happens next with ActBlue, is there something that's going to prevent ActBlue from operating? Like, does the executive order come out and all of a sudden ActBlue has to stop in its tracks, or do we have to wait for a judge, for example, to validate his executive order before anything can actually happen?
Yeah, so nothing automatically happens. Sometimes I think of these executive orders as, sort of press releases with
Right.
Truth Social posts behind them, right?
Yeah.
This one is more than that, in that it's a very serious thing. Anytime the President of the United States tells the Attorney General to conduct a criminal investigation or an investigation at all. By the way, when I say that that's a serious matter, it's actually something that everyone says you can't do, right? This is a norm that has existed for years and years. And when Bill Clinton wound up on the tarmac wishing Loretta Lynch, warm wishes, there was a national scandal. Here it is,
Right.
Donald Trump telling the Attorney General to literally open investigations into her political opponents. But and we're just sort of shrugging and moving past it. But the fact is, Brian, it is not self-executing. The next thing we can expect is that Pam Bondi, who is a sycophant of Donald Trump's, will do exactly what she was asked to do, right? She will follow Donald Trump's command, as all of his good sycophants do. And what he is hoping, what the Republican Party is hoping, what Republicans on Capitol Hill, who have also opened their own investigations, geez, I wonder why, since they are candidates for Congress running against Democrats who use ActBlue. But what they're all hoping is two things. Number one, that it will scare off some of the users of ActBlue, whether they be the candidates and organizations or whether they be the donors. They'll be scared off of ActBlue. That I don't think is going to happen, and it shouldn't. The second is that they are hoping that they will find, as the federal prosecutor in the Southern District of New York said when he resigned for refusing to improperly dismiss the charges against Eric Adam, they're hoping they will find someone who is a coward, or foolish enough to do what Pam Bondi and Donald Trump wants, which is to begin a serious, loud, public, set of investigations against ActBlue that tarnish it and sully its reputation and do all of that. At that point, the courts may get involved, but our system, Brian, I hate to say, is not built for bad faith initiations of investigations. They are built for the idea that the Department of Justice conducts discrete investigations. These are not politicized. They're not directed by the White House. They're not, you don't have the Attorney General doing press conferences from the White House lawn,
Yeah.
and so we'll see what the courts do when they get involved. But typically courts say, well, we're going to let an investigation happen. We'll come in if charges are brought or something like that.
Is there some concern then that, to the point of finding somebody who is cowardly enough or foolish enough to actually do Trump's bidding, that somebody like Ed Martin, the U.S. attorney in D.C., the acting U.S. attorney in D.C., would be perfectly content to pick up that baton?
Oh, I mean, he's like out of central casting for this, right?
Right. He's like frothing at the mouth to do it.
Right. I mean, he's, busy with a number of other letters that I guess he sent out to people. But,
That's right.
But sure. And look, it could be Ed Martin. It could be someone in the Department of Justice. I mean, at this point, they have hollowed out much of the Department of Justice. I mean, Brian, at this point, they have lawyers defending the removal of 2-year-old children who are U.S. citizens out of this country. They have lawyers who are standing up, parroting the nonsense that Stephen Miller and Donald Trump say about the illegal removal of people in violation of court orders to El Salvadorian gulags. So I am sure they will find the fool and the coward, whether it's Ed Martin or it's someplace else.
Can you speak about the extent to which this might expose WinRed, which is the Republicans' platform? Does this either set a legal precedent to go after these platforms, or does this also just set an atmospheric precedent where, okay, it's all is fair in love and war now, and we just, it's okay to go after these platforms that are really the lifeblood of grassroots donations for each political party?
Right. So look, in a more honest administration, well, I mean, in an honest administration, they wouldn't be doing the investigation at all.
Right.
But in a more honest administration, if there was a genuine concern about online fundraising platforms, you would see them look at a multitude of online fundraising platforms, in part because they'd want to know if there are pervasive issues in the industry, right? I mean, after all, the CFPB, in a different context, that's part of what it does. It looks at all the banks, right? It doesn't just pick one bank, right? It looks to see if there's a problem with the credit card industry as a whole. So you could imagine that. But that, of course, is not what's happening here. What's happening here is it is targeting the one Democratic one. Now, you ask a question. Does that mean that, if Republicans go after ActBlue, you could see Democratic AGs, for example? Because honestly, a lot of the stuff that he's talking about ActBlue is also something that could be within the jurisdiction of Attorney General, right? So do you see Democratic AGs do that? I'm kind of mixed on this because on the one hand, I don't believe that there should be asymmetrical de-escalation or asymmetrical fighting for democracy. I think the Democrats need to use every tool available to them. On the other hand, I think you and I have both commented before, and you've been quite eloquent about this, that asymmetry is sort of, I won't say baked in the cake. If the cake isn't baked, it's heating.
Yeah. Marc, I have to ask, we see these attacks against entities like ActBlue, and this may very well cause some folks who are going to donate to not donate. To your exact point, I don't think there's going to be many, but there may certainly be some who see what's happening and say, I don't want anything to do with it. It may cost ActBlue in legal fees to be able to fight this frivolous effort by the Trump administration. And so is there any recourse, or do we just have to kind of sit back and just be attacked, have it cost us money, have it cost us users, have it cost us donations, and just take it? Or is there some way to push back against this in a way that can have some deterrent effect against this administration for weaponizing the federal government?
Yeah, so I think you raise a really good point. I want to add one more to that, which is that the campaigns operate in a kind of a interesting and a unique set of circumstances, which is that literally time is money. Right? Like, it is more true for campaigns than almost any other business that you can't get back what you didn't accomplish yesterday. There's a finite number of days before the next election. Right. And every day you are not raising money, you are not raising money. Like, you can't tack an extra day on at the end. Every day you're not campaigning, you're not campaigning. Every day a television ad doesn't air, it's not airing, right? And so for the users, you're exactly right. And for ActBlue, you're exactly right. But don't forget that for the entities that rely on it, they also have to be thinking, even though I'm sure they're not abandoning, they're not leaving ActBlue, they have to be spending some amount of time and energy and money planning, okay, well, what if something happens. And what if it doesn't happen in 2025? What if it happens in, August or September of 2026,
Yeah.
right? When you're in the teeth of things. So I don't want to overstate that because, like I said, I think people see this for what it is, but is that cost as well. And every time a campaign is spending any time on these kinds of things, they are not spending that time on other ways that they can be for the election. Look, I think ActBlue and its lawyers need to look seriously about challenging this executive order. I'm a big believer in challenging executive orders that are threatening and political, because number one, Donald Trump, we have learned, loses in court an awful lot around these executive orders. The judges are tired, I think, of the shenanigans that they see coming out of the Trump administration. They are skeptical, more skeptical today than they have ever been before at the good faith of these executive orders. I wrote a piece for Democracy Docket about the presumption of regularity, which is sort of the notion that the government is given the benefit of the doubt in these kinds of instances. And I think that it's time that we do away with that. I argue in its entirety, but I think judges are starting to cut back on it. So I would encourage ActBlue to look very seriously with its lawyers at bringing affirmative litigation to try to cut this off. But as I said, there is, the Trump administration's position is going to be, look, if they haven't done anything wrong, what are they worried about? So we're going to have to wait and see. But I wish I could tell you that it will end with ActBlue. I think we are only seeing the beginning of the politicization of the Department of Justice and the targeting of individuals and groups that Donald Trump thinks stands in his way.
Well, look, no one has been more aggressive in terms of covering this stuff than you and your team at Democracy Docket. So highly recommend for anybody who's watching right now, if you want to follow along with this coverage, please make sure to sign up. I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Marc Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.